Hi everyone, my name is Kat, or the Free Librarian, and welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to do my February wrap-up. It is raining really bad outside, so I'm sorry if you can hear that. Anyway, I have 5 books to talk to you about today. One of those is a DNF, and then the other 4 I have 1 3.5-star read, 1 4-star, and 2 5-stars, and I'll just go over them in chronological order, so this will be ranked from worst to best or anything. It's just the order that I read them in. So the first book that I read is Fairest by Marissa Meyer. This is book 3.5 in the Lunar Chronicles. It's a little prequel novella with the origin story of Queen Levana. I personally don't love villain origin stories in general. It's not a type of story that interests me a lot. But I think this one was done pretty well. A problem that I have with villain origin stories is that very often you just get person is a normal person or even a good person, and then one bad thing happens and now they're evil, but you don't actually see them becoming evil because the bad thing that happens at the end of the book. And I'm just like, this is not... I have a problem with that formatting in general. But this one, like, the bad thing that has happened is, if there is one, then it already happened before the book started. And you just see Levana go from not even a good child. She's like pretty selfish and a little messed up already to begin with. How just things get worse and worse, and how she was able to do what she did because at the beginning of the book she doesn't have the power to be the evil queen that we know her as. So how does she gain that power, and what happened there? That was kind of fun to see. You really need to read this book between Cress and Winter, because there's a reveal in Cress that will be spoiled if you read this first, and then in Winter there are certain things that rely on knowledge that you gain in this book. So it really should be read here. But yeah, I really like this series as a whole, and I think that it was a very good version of what it was. Even though what it was trying to do is just not my favorite thing. But I still really enjoyed it, so I gave this book 4 stars. Then I finished No Escape by Nuri Turkle. This is a nonfiction. The full title is No Escape, The True Story of China's Genocide of the Uyghurs. I have a full standalone video that is almost an hour long discussing this book, so I'll try to be brief here. This was such a hard book to read. It was probably the most intense book that I've read in my entire life, which is why it took me so long, because I started reading it in October, I think. And it took me till now because I couldn't read it for a very long time on end, and then sometimes I just need like a break of a week or two before continuing, because it was so hard to read. I mention a lot of things that happen in it in that video and some of my takeaways, but I don't even mention everything. And oh, it's so, like, I knew that it was a thing, but I didn't know the extent to which this happened. So I'm glad that I know this. It is important subject matter. So that's very important. Also, Marie Turkle is a good writer, very compelling, but structurally it's sometimes just a little bit messy and a little clunky. For example, there's one chapter where we alternate between three stories, and just the way we jump from one story to the next is not always the most smooth. So that's one critique that I have. Other than that, it's a really, really well done book. So I give this a well-deserved 5 stars. Next, I read The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. This is the first Discworld book. It's a very short book, but it took me a lot longer to read than I thought it would. And while I was reading it, I was really enjoying it, and it was very funny, and I liked the writing style. I laughed out loud a couple of times. I really enjoyed my time when I was reading it, but if I put it down, then I never really felt the urge to pick it back up. Part of that is because I did feel that the story was a little bit at arm's length, or at least I had a little trouble or difficulty connecting to the characters. But from what I've heard, this is the least good out of the Discworld books. So I definitely wanna keep going, and I did enjoy my time. I gave it 3.5 stars. I liked it, but I just, yeah, it's not the full 5 stars. I did like the plot of it, even though like half the time I had no idea what was going on, but it was fun. So yeah, I liked it. I definitely want to continue on. Then I read The Cairo Diaries by Maxime Chaton, which is a thriller. And this was my DNF of the month. It wasn't great. So it started with like an author's note at the beginning, which was just pretentious. It was like, this is what reading means, and this is what writing means, and I was like, oh god, no. One thing that I like about the author's note is it said if you like listening to music, ambient music while reading, I recommend these two because that's what I used in writing, and so they fit the story really well. And then in this chapter, you have to switch to this music. So I did like that. But yeah, the author's note was a little pretentious. And then the book itself wasn't great either. So it's about a woman who is on the run, and so the CIA, it's set in France. I don't know what the French version of the CIA is. Send her to the Mont Saint Michel, which is it's part of France, and then depending on the tides, it's sometimes an island and sometimes a peninsula. So she's sent there. And they say that she's on a religious retreat. But obviously she's just on the run, and so anyway, there is an abbey on the Mont Saint Michel who know about her, who know like the real story of her help hiding her. And they are helping like the archive of the town to reorganize or something the books. I don't exactly remember. And there she helps them, and there she finds the diary of someone who was in Cairo in the 1920s, and murders or disappearances happened. I didn't like it. I had the timeline of the woman because I started right when the first chapter of the 1920s Cairo timeline started. I stopped right before that, so I don't have anything to comment on that. But okay, so I don't think this is a spoiler because it's near the beginning, but she is sleeping and she wakes up, and on her bedside table she finds a note that wasn't there the night before. So she doesn't know who was in her room, and she really freaks out, which obviously the note contains a really dumb riddle. So she solves the riddle, and it tells her to go somewhere at midnight on her own. So you're on the run, right? Someone, you don't know who, has been into your room while you were asleep and then tells you, come alone to this random place in the middle of the night. So of course she goes. Like, what? Why does she think that this is a good idea? I'm so confused. And it's just, there were things like that. And then like the writing style, and it was one of those thrillers where you have the really short chapters and they all end with a dun 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 moment, and those just don't work for me. It was so overly dramatic, but not in a fun way. Like, I mean, Dan Brown's books are completely over the top as well, but there it's fun. And here it was just trying to do that, but also not wanting to go there. And it's just like a weird spot in the middle where it's like you can't really take it seriously, but it's also not the fun ridiculousness. So yeah, that was very disappointing. So a lot of telling rather than showing as well. It wasn't for me, so I DNF'd it at about 20%. And the last book that I have to talk to you about today was a reread, and it was Lustrum by Robert Harris, Conspirata, if you're in the US, which is the second book in the Kikero trilogy. I love this series. It's one of my favorite series of all time. The Library of Alexandria is hosting a read along for it. and I love that it's finally getting the recognition that it deserves. It's great. I love the writing style in it. It's so vivid and transportive. Um, I it's very historically accurate as well. Robert Harris knows how to show um, just how serious things are. Um, I don't want to spoil it, but they're like when you read a history book, you can sometimes be, oh, this thing happened, and you're like, okay, but you don't really realize what the implications of that are for those living in that time. Um, and so I think Robert Harris does an amazing job at portraying that and really making feel the seriousness of the situation. Um, so I love that. I I love how insufferable Kikuro is. Um, I love Pompeius. He's also insufferable and so self-important and so dumb, and I love it. um, so yeah, it's I love it. I think the stakes are really higher than in book one, um, like a lot higher than in book one, and it's a lot more political than the well, the second half of the first book is kind of political as well, but this one even more so. So yeah, I really loved that. So that was the month. I feel good about it. Um, what did you read in February? I would love to know. And I hope to see you again in a new video soon. Bye.